Thanks everybody so much for joining this panel discussion. My name's Elena Bowman. I'm here with HitTrax, joined by three amazing coaches here to talk a little bit about their experience with HitTrax. We're so grateful, Coach Drohan, Coach Hutch, Coach Salters, for coming on and having this discussion with us. So we're going to get right into it. We don't have a whole ton of time, but really the point of this discussion is to dive into the DNA of each of these three programs. We're lucky enough at HitTrax to be part of their families and part of their practice environments. But we've really intentionally selected these three coaches as they've integrated the system within their program all a little bit differently. So we're looking forward to learning more and sharing more about their experience so far. And again, we're just so grateful that they're coming on to join us. So without further ado, let's make a quick introduction. We'll get right into it. Coach Hutch, I'm not sure that we need too much of an introduction, but we'll go ahead and do one anyway. All-time winningest coach in NCAA history, has been the head coach for the University of Michigan for 37 seasons. You're a national champion. You got 21 Big Ten titles under your belt. NFCA Hall of Fame coach, winningest coach at the University of Michigan, and you have 68 All-Americans under your watch. Pretty impressive. So with all of that being said, Coach, we know you know a thing or two about winning, and we also know you know a thing or two about planning practice. So you've shared with us, you know, a big component and a big key to the culture at Michigan is just adding competition to practice, adding pressure to the training environment. So tell us a little bit about how in the past you've added competition into your practices, and why do you think that this best prepares your players for game day?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And in my mind, the most important thing we do is compete. You know, we played at practice the other day, Steal the Bacon on Halloween, and the bacon was the bag of candy, and the kids were diving over the line so they didn't get tagged. And the only thing I care about is that you're playing to win regardless of what you're playing. And so, you know, practice can become very repetitive, as we need to be repetitive, but yet at some point, we only care if you can, execute your skill under the adversity of competition. And so we have, over the years, tried to always have at least one component daily and maybe several times a week at best, where we compete against something, and against each other, against the clock. I think in this culture that we have, where we bring kids that have largely showcased, they spend a lot of time showcasing their skills. We get a lot of really skilled kids, but now we've got to add the one component where now you've got to do something when it matters. And we have found, first and foremost, when we started measuring exit velocities, how well they would improve in just ordinary batting practice, whether it's front toss, batting practice, pitching machines, whatever. And then the minute we made it about something else, like points, the first thing we saw was our exit velocities go down. Because all of a sudden, we are all tight. We get tight everywhere. We try harder, and we need to learn how to handle the adversities and how to make competition in practice the same. So we like them to compete in every aspect of what they're doing. As I always say, you want to be the first one picked. You want to be the kid that everybody wants on your team. You want to be the best. You want to be the best one. So finding a way to measure it, I think, has been the best thing we've been able to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it sounds like you get pretty creative with the competitions that you integrate. I mean, here, this picture to the right you shared with us, I think this is pre-HitTrax. You got a line out there on the cage, and I think you're letting us know that, you know, above the line was a certain amount of points, and below the line, certain amount of points to the left, to the right. And, you know, obviously this has to be manually calculated, but the juice is flowing nonetheless, right? So I think that's a really good segue into what has adding the HitTrax to that practice environment. What has that enabled you to do? And you touched a little bit on it by looking at the differences in exit velocities when they're competing versus when they're relaxed. So how have you been able to integrate the HitTrax in beneficial ways to add competition to the training environment?
Well, we like to do a lot of, whether we do one-on-one. So I might take a swing, and then Caryl takes a swing, and then I take another swing, and then Caryl takes a swing. And my favorite game is the point game. I love just to get the most points. And again, maybe my first time I only get 5 total swings, and Caryl gets 5 total swings. So we do one-on-one competition for who gets the most points. And if I happen to hit it foul, we know we don't get any points. And so we'll create competitions like that. Or we often have in their small groups, maybe I've got 4 different groups of hitters. When they go to the HitTrax station, what group accumulates the most points? Because again, we want to be a team sport and focus on what we do as a team. And so we'll play the point game, and the group that gets the most points wins. And as you see here, a photo of our tournament. We set up an indoor tournament every near the end of every fall, and it's a double elim bracket where every year we found different ways to add challenges as they go through each part of the bracket. But ultimately, with HitTrax, to me, the most attractive thing was all the competitions that you could come up with. That you could compete. They have to hit the ball well when it matters, or they go to the losers bracket, or then they're out of the tournament. So, we found there's so many different things you can do with it. The whole point is to put them in positions that they're going to be in on game day, which is I've got the bat, it's up to me, and can I execute? Can I execute my best swing? Can I have my best exit velo? Can I connect when it matters? And learning to get our kids over that hump of not trying too hard, of trusting their training, and to just execute the swing they have it's definitely very beneficial.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. And I love the 1v1 kind of high stakes environment. And how do you find your players respond to that with the immediate feedback, the HitTrax, seeing exactly what the hit is doing, seeing what the other person is doing in the cage? Do you find that this brings out an additional layer of competitiveness? Do you find a certain kind of player rises to the occasion? And then kind of big picture, do you see that translate to performance on the field? Do you see their quality hit scores, the more they do it, continue to elevate, and their data, their numbers continue to follow suit, just in terms of big picture improvement?
Well, I think most importantly, it's, I said this the other day, if you measure it, then you can improve it. Once we know what we're doing as opposed to, boy, it seems like you hit well, we measure it. And we have seen what we not only measure it, but we've kept a chart on their locker room wall where every week what their average exit velos are, what their max exit is, and then the hit club. So once they hit 70, once they hit 80, once they hit 85, and they get kind of like gold stars. And what this has done is engage them in this activity because of the coolness of the whole thing. It's like an advanced hitting video game, and it engages them. They all end up at the HitTrax cage to watch the other competitions going on, and they get real competitive with each other. But I think more than anything, that's gotten them excited about hitting the ball in a whole new kind of way, because they can see it. They can't argue it. HitTrax is the final judge. It isn't me deciding it's a pop-up versus a home run. And have we seen it pay off on the field? To be honest, it's the only place that it matters where it pays off, in my opinion. We got into HitTrax late last fall and started our season very well with a team that started off hitting very well. Whether it was totally due to HitTrax, I think they had spent a lot of time in competitions. We started out very competitive. And, obviously we didn't get a chance to see how the whole season was going to play out. But in my mind, that's the goal of the whole thing, is to be competitive and improve.
That's awesome. That's great, Coach. Well, thank you so much for sharing. All right, so we are moving on to the next segment, and what I think is really cool, specifically about this conversation and this panel together, is I think there's a little bit of overlap too. And Coach Hutch, you mentioned looking into the data, tracking the data, using that data as measurement, but predominantly on the competitive side of things. And now moving on to Coach Drohan. Coach Drohan, as a quick intro, same thing. You've been around the block for quite some time. I know a lot of people don't need this introduction, but at Northwestern for 17 seasons, been NFCA Coaching Staff of the Year a couple times, Mid-East Region Coaching Staff of the Year, several All-Americans, 12 under your belt. And so, Coach, I know you predominantly really enjoy and really engage with the video analysis features, but that's not to say you don't integrate some of those competitive aspects that Coach Hutch was talking about, which is pretty cool. But if we go into this first question for you, I mean, Northwestern joined the HitTrax family in the fall of 2019. Kind of take us through a little bit of your existing player development model. I know it's a pretty data heavy program, and you have some serious systems in place. So take us through what was already in place, and then some key ways that you've added HitTrax and that's helped amplify what you've done there.
Sure. Thank you for having us. This has been really fun. It's great to always stop yourself and think about why you do things and what's important to you as a coach. So when you first asked me this question, I thought, well, I want my athletes to own their swing. Like, they need to own exactly what they're trying to achieve. They need to own what kind of mover they are, understand it. They need to understand the adjustments they want to make, and they need to understand how to make those adjustments in a game against certain pitchers, against certain spins and velocities and different things like that. So what I want my athletes to do is to understand exactly how they're going to turn that ball around. And video analysis is a great way to do that. And when you have that kind of understanding, then you have repeatability, you have adjustability, you have barrel awareness, and that's going to help you become a successful hitter. It's also going to help you be a confident hitter, and that's when you enter a batter's box with some serious swag. So let's take a look at this video, and I can show you how I help my athletes. Before we do start, I do want to tell you that a lot of times with the video analysis, they may not look at it during practice. They have the option. We do set that up with HitTrax quite often. And a lot of times I'll email it to them, and that way they can reflect on the video, do their comparisons, and then the next day we'll have a great conversation about it. So that's mostly how I utilize this video analysis in those two ways.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And to your point, of just helping them own their swings, I love that. They have to get in the box on their own. You can't do it for them, so give them the confidence in their approach and the ability to know what they need to do to make adjustments pitch to pitch. I can imagine that being really helpful, and for you to empower them with that knowledge is really cool. So I know you put together this awesome kind of, I would call it a walkthrough of what you do on the video analysis side, which is great because I think for people that aren't super familiar with HitTrax, they'll be able to see what our software looks like. So I'm going to play this so you can start to see, and I'm going to let you kind of talk through your flow at practice, or maybe after practice when you're analyzing the stuff for your hitters.
So we're starting off with my first player, and what we want to do is we want to get a video clip of her hitting front toss. So you can see by the pitch velocity, it's front toss. So we key up that. Then the next one we want to look at is we want to look at her hitting live. And here you see the pitch velocity there. Let's scroll down. And so now we have two swings. One's off of front toss, one's off of a live pitcher. We'll go side by side with them. You want to sync them up, find your contact point, and then from there you can see how those two swings compare. So just looking at this hitter, we'll see that she gets her foot down much later when she's hitting front toss. So right there, we're going to talk about that and talk about how she's going to get her game swing on when she's practicing front toss and taking care of that. But because we have this synced up video analysis, we're going to be able to easily see that where the naked eye may not have been able to catch that when we first take a look at it. You see the highlighted clips there. Moving on.
Sorry to interrupt, Coach. Can I just ask you, do your players find it helpful to have that data side by side to be able to say, here's a ball I've hit this hard, here's one I've squared up, and here's one I haven't? Is that helpful feedback for them?
For sure. And what I want my athletes to do is to see what they feel. So as a hitter, I ask them a million times a day, what did that feel like? What did that feel like? What did that feel like? Well, once they see what they feel, then they have a much better understanding of what their body's doing. Because oftentimes when an athlete tells themselves to do a movement, when they look at the video, they're like, oh, wow, that's not the position I want to be in. So it's super helpful for them to see what they feel, because then they can make an adjustment from there.
Awesome. Great. Okay.
So now we have, you see 8 pitches in a row. You have a fastball and a changeup. You see the pitch velocity. Every other is going there. So now we're seeing that this hitter was she was zoning changeups in this round. See that she turned 3 of them around for a home run. So we're going to look at how she's hitting a fastball versus how she's hitting a changeup and see if there's any difference in what her body's going to do. So I take down the first 2 videos I put the next two up, fastball and a changeup, and now let's see where she's moving, how her timing's, how her body's going, to go from there. So it's great for that athlete to see how she's connecting with those pitches and how she's gonna, if she's gonna have different movements when she's zoning that changeup and when she's not. And then you can gradually move on to different sets where she won't know the changeup's coming. But that's how we'll teach that, is to let them know it's coming so that they can learn how to hit it, and then they go into that unknown.
Mm-hmm. Really cool. Really cool how you challenge them with the different pitch speeds in practice too.
For sure.
And you're
And
able
you can
to
see on the left that I use some of the tools too to draw on it. You can draw on the video. I honestly don't use that very often, but I know that it's a great feature here that a lot of people will use. All right, now we're going to go to my next hitter. Now we're going to compare two swings on location. So we'll highlight the first one. That's a down and out pitch. We see that in our grid over here on the left that she turns around pretty well. And then the next pitch that we look at is going to be a pitch that's tighter and inside. So now let's look at those two pitches, those two swings side by side, so that she can understand what her body is doing when she wants to hit those different locations. And so it's just them seeing what they feel so that they can turn that ball around. And then from there, they'll take in their launch angle, understand why the ball traveled that certain distance with those same exit velocities. And once a hitter really grasps that understanding, then they can be very special.
That's awesome. And do you ever use that feature when you're I guess you don't have too much, unfortunately, with the season being cut short, you know, it kind of took away a little bit of an opportunity, but I'm just thinking preparing, you know, for maybe you're seeing a rise ball pitcher that week or a down ball pitcher, you're able to compare up pitch, here's what you look like when you're successful, and here's what you're looking like when you're missing
for
it.
Sure. We'll compare a lot of these swings to game swings and see what the difference is, and see where they failed or see where they were successful. So here's two of my hitters. The one on the left is naturally a righty, and then the one on the right is obviously a lefty. We got where, here we go. Yep, you're good from here. So I want to compare these two hitters, because sometimes I'll have a hitter want to make a movement and they won't understand it. So, okay, show me someone that does it well. So this feature is great because I can turn my righty hitter on the left into a lefty hitter. So now I can compare them to see where they're different and to show her what movements I want her to achieve by comparing her to another athlete. And I think that athletes today do a great job of learning visually, and we can make that, and that's why this tool is so great, because it speaks their language. And then again, switching my righty hitter into a lefty to go from there.
That's awesome, Coach. That's such a cool visual to be able to show that mirror. Wow.
And then here, I think I added my hitter on the right is a bit of a drifter. Hitter on the left is not, so they can take a look at each other and understand what she wants to model, along with the drills that we'll have outside of the cages. There you go.
Awesome. So, and it's interesting, like, I'm curious your experience with this in terms of the feedback loop. Do you find when they see it, they get back in, they make the adjustment faster, the data reflects it? Tell me about like how that impacts their development process. Does it speed it up, or does it give them more confidence in the approach? Like, have you seen a quicker transition into what you're asking them to do with the feedback?
Well, I think that's the art of coaching right there, and that these are all tools for us to use. There's some athletes like Hutch said, like, today's an 80 day, like you need to hit 80 all day today. And then there are different athletes where you want to concentrate strictly on their launch angle, and those are the only numbers you want them to look at. And some athletes that you don't want to talk about mechanics, you just want to talk about athletic moves, and that's going to translate in their swing. And that's our job as a coach, to figure out how they're going to understand this information the best. And I have some athletes that I'm the only one that looks at it. I have some athletes that understand and can run a whole HitTrax seminar if they needed to. So, and that's just our job to figure out what's best for that athlete.
Really cool. Really cool. Well, again, thank you for sharing. I think that was super helpful to see and dive into all the different features available with the video analysis.
Great.
So moving on to Coach Salter's kind of the king of data in a lot of respects. So that's where we'll start with that introduction. You're entering your third season at UTSA, previously on staff for a couple seasons at Florida State, had your own stint in the professional ball and the baseball side of things. So you're super familiar with the game. And again, we really appreciate you being on with us to talk about how you've integrated data with your program. So our first question, and really we have to start here. To the right, you see this graphic, right? So last year you're on pace, about halfway through your games, you've just about totaled your home run total from 2019. You're scoring on average just about two more runs per game. You have almost about as many runs scored, just 50 shy of your total season total in 2019. So you're off to an amazing start in 2020. Talk us through a little bit of the offensive philosophy that you've brought into UTSA. So 2019 season 1 with the program, 2020 season 2, and then tell us how HitTrax has helped you build on that.
Well, first, thank you for having me. And those were some kind words at the beginning. I like listening to how some other people use, some similar technology, because there's always tips that you can pick up and things that maybe you could think about trying. The biggest thing that HitTrax did for us as far as the off season was it built in a bit of accountability on my side as far as what I was programming or what I was cueing for the athletes, and accountability on their side because they were able to see every day where they were trending, what they were doing, if the things that they were working on were clicking. If they weren't, we needed to go back to the drawing board. And just was something that was able to record every single day. So you could give tangible evidence that the things that you were doing, that you were actually practicing, you were getting better at, and you just weren't down there practicing, just doing busy work.
That's awesome. And I say king of data because I think you really do an amazing job just in our conversations and clearly in the results on the field in not making a one-size-fits-all model for all of your athletes. I think you do a really amazing job of using the data to help you program for your athlete and make individual progress, chart progress and create their trends in the direction that you want them individually to move. So you've kind of told us in the past about the way you block different athletes and different practice groups depending on where they're at developmentally. Tell us a little bit how you've used the HitTrax data to help you program for individual hitters based on the role that you want them to play in your lineup.
Well, I tell people I like to let the data tell me the story at the beginning. So usually during the first couple of weeks, we do a thing called blocked and random practice. The random kids are the kids that pretty much have their pattern figured out. They understand the things that they need to work on to stay on top of that. And the block kids are usually the kids that need a little bit more work, or they're usually the freshmen. They just don't understand the lingo and the philosophy and the things that we're going to ask them to do. So the first 2 weeks is really a lot of observation and just putting in the system again. Again, the random kids are probably a little bit sped up, but again, it's just putting in the system, making sure everybody understands the lingo and the things that I'm asking them to do. And then for about 2 weeks, I just collect. We'll do some front toss, some VP, and then some machine, but not really with coaching points to it. And just kind of let it collect some swings. Let's kind of see where they are. What's the max? What's the average? Do they cut balls? Do they flare balls? How many balls do they square up? Are they more pull side? Are they more other way? Are they more balanced? And then I just kind of let it tell me where a kid is. And then based on kind of how our roster is shaped up, then I will start to program, okay, I think this kid may need to be a starter. Maybe this kid's a role player. Maybe this kid's a middle of lineup kid. Maybe this kid's more towards the bottom. We need to be focused more on barrel path and direction. Hey, this kid, we need to get the ball up a little bit more. Hey, this kid is going to start but maybe hit near the back of the lineup. I need her to get the ball down some. I don't need her to worry about hitting the ball as high. So it just kind of depends. Like I said, I like to collect early on, let the data tell me what they're doing or trying to do, and then work from there.
Cool. Well, I think you shared with us two really great examples of programming for the particular athlete and depending on long-term what goal you want them to play in your lineup. So these reports are 2 years apart, and they're color coded. So the top is in 2019, September 11th. The bottom is September 9th, 2020. So you've shared that the player on the left, and we'll start there, she was somebody that hit for power. You needed her to hit more for average. She's a middle of the lineup kid. She has a lot of potential, but she just wasn't there yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll kind of let you take it from there just to set the scene a little bit, and just tell us what your development process was with her and what your overall goal, and then what data you look to see if you are meeting that, exceeding that, or need to focus in a different area.
Okay, so this kid right here was in upper 60s, low 70s bat, which in softball, if you understand, if you can touch 70 and you can hover around the upper 60s on your average, that's more than enough power to get things done. Like, you don't need to get out and reach for more. So I knew this kid I didn't need her to increase power. She hit the ball hard enough already. But as you can see, if you look at the top, what she didn't do was square the ball up enough consistently. So we could hit for as much power as we want to, but if we don't make, enough contact, or if we're cutting balls a lot, well, then, the power is basically worthless. So as you can see on the top one there in 2019, listen, there's 67s that are flashing there on the left. If you look at the box again, if you look on the metrics on the right, you can see during that time, we're still mid 60s. So it's plenty of juice. But if you look at the average launch angle, left to left field, we're fine at 15, center at 26, which she had enough juice to hit at 26, but you don't want to live at 26. 26 getting towards the upper echelon there. And then you look at right field, we're at 35. 35 is way too high, especially this kid's considering she's right-handed. So if I'm going 35 to right field, I'm probably cutting a lot of balls that way, and those aren't the type of contact that we want to have. So for her, for the past year, the thing was about, hey, listen, her arms didn't work very well. We need to lower the overall launch angle, and it's going to lead to more consistent contact, which is going to lead to the things that you want to have happen. Like, you hit the ball hard enough already. Let's lower the launch angle and see what happens. So then in the bottom, September from this year, so as you can see, the overall power didn't go up. She's basically still the same player as far as how hard she hits it. But as you can see, launch angle overall lowers. The numbers jump up drastically. So you look at the bottom there, if you look kind of at her point of contact box, much more consistent from the back of the zone to the front of the zone. Balls are now, those balls that are kind of at the top that are red kind of in center field, you see them, they're starting to get blue farther back there into the right center field gap. If you look all the way over to the right there, the average jumps up 61 points on these 2 days. Slugging's up 54. Line drive percentage goes up. Ground ball percentage kind of goes up a little bit, but I kind of expected that. But what I really wanted to focus on with her was lowering the fly ball percentage. So you look at the fly ball percentage a year ago is at 51%. Now it's at 12%, and the line drive percentage jumps up to 73. Hard hit goes up, line drive percentage goes up, and so we're still hitting the ball as hard as we did. We're just doing it more consistently. Numbers skyrocket.
Yeah, that's awesome. So she did it. She did exactly what you needed her to do. Hit
exactly what I needed to do.
Square up more balls, use a little bit more of the entire field. That's really cool. So, and the video or the report on the right, same thing, a year apart. Just again to set the scene a little bit, right? Carlton, correct me if I'm wrong. She was a slapper, but you wanted her to be able to stand in, hit a little bit, have more of a hitting presence in the box.
I did. So the top one was, we're just getting started. We're going to start hitting full time now. We're not going to slap anymore. So you see, the stuff on the top's not bad. A lot more coverage at the front, just because of how our pattern worked, trying to convert it from the slapping. So, slapper used to getting the barrel way out in front. So max speeds at the front, but as far as covering the zone, not as good from the back to the front. We had adjustability issues. So that was part of repatterning her a little bit. But you look at the top, those numbers aren't bad. Those numbers say this is a pretty good player. You look down at the bottom now, as we started to make changes and started getting comfortable hitting for a year. Now you look to the right, the point of contact. Now we're covering from the back of the zone to the front of the zone very, very consistently, and we're hitting the ball very hard for where she is. If you look at over the boxes, average velocity across the board has jumped. Launch angles pretty much average, which she has really good barrel control. So I expected that not to change a whole lot, or I was hoping that it wouldn't change a whole lot when we converted to a hitter. But what I wanted to have happen was obviously the velocity, average velocity pickup. Now we go from like purposefully chopping balls, trying to beat the defense versus we're just going to drive the ball through the defense or over the defense. This kid in 2020 at the halfway mark, she had already set the career high for home runs for her in half a season that she had hit in the previous 3 seasons combined. Also I think she was 2 or 3 doubles away from as many doubles as she had hit in the previous 2 years. So the things that we wanted to accomplish, we were able to do. And the good thing for her with this was able to send this to her every day. So if she didn't have a great day, she knew she was still trending in the right direction.
So to keep her confidence in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, we're running a little bit short on time. So I think this slide here is important. And this story is really interesting, but I kind of want to go through it quickly. So what I think is really profound is the way you've used the data to detail your expectation of hitters. So they have a really clearly defined role or task to be able to get where they want to go. And you've used the data to help you have that conversation. So tell us about this hitter a little bit, and then tell us what you're trying to do with her and what her path is to a starting position in your lineup.
Okay, so with this hitter at the top in 2019, as you can see, like pretty consistent. She had never really hit before. She had hit in travel ball and stuff, but had never hit in college. So her whole freshman year, she didn't hit. So this 2019 was basically trying to collect some things and just see where she was at. What could she give us? Obviously, the first thing that jumps out to you in 2019 is the max exit velocity. This is a mid to low to up mid 70s bat. I don't have a bunch of mid 70s bats just laying around. So we have to be able to get something out of that. So in 2019, just trying to collect a bunch of stuff, see where she was at, see what we have. So in 2019, if you look between the 15 and 25, 25 to 35, there's a lot of swings in there. We did a lot of front toss, a lot of easy BP just to find out what we had, see where she was at, but not as much in the more competitive if you look to 45 to 55 off the machine. If you scroll down to 2020, now she's had a year of hitting. She pinch hit some for us a little bit last year. We really liked what we saw. We've liked what we've seen through the fall. Your first glance at 2020, you say, well, everything's trending down. She's getting worse. Not necessarily. If you look at the 15 to 25, 25 to 35, not nearly as many swings in that category in 2020 as in 2019. Also, we've added a category of 55 to 65 off the machine. In 2019, she couldn't even get there to that point as far as practicing because we weren't there. Now she has improved to the point where we can get closer, really close to that game type velocity. And if you look across the boards at her numbers, she's holding her own. So she's not getting there against the upper echelon velocity and just getting blown up. She's getting in there and able to hold her own. We would like for the average velocity to pick up. But again, this is a kid that's only been hitting for about 8 or 9 months. So I'm not surprised by that, but we should be able to get something out of her. And I can send that to her and says, hey, look, this is where you're trending. If you just get more consistent of getting that average closest to the max, then you can play as much as you want.
Awesome. All right. So in this next slide, we wanted to ask you, what your players' feedback is. And Carlton, I know you integrate the system in a lot of different ways, predominantly on the data side, but I know you do some video, and I also know you do some competition and like to turn up the heat in what you're doing. So I think we should maybe just let the video do the talking on this one, and we'll go from there.
Mm-hmm.
So I get fired up with stuff like that, right? Like it kind of brings you back to the ballpark feel, kids competing, enjoying their time with their teammates in the cage with each other. So I will put that question back on you. Tell us a little bit about how your players respond to the HitTrax feedback.
I believe they enjoy it because I send out reports and video every day. So there's no secrets where you are, where you stand, how you're trending, how you're doing. They know that to be able to play, it's performance-based. So every day you're going to get a performance report. If you have any questions about it, you can come ask. Some kids, like I heard Caryl said, some kids look for just EV. Some kids look for how high I hit it. That's true for us too. Some kids, they just want to know, how many times did I touch 70 today? Some kids want to know, how consistent was my spray chart? So that depends on each kid, but I send reports every day and it helps the kids understand where they are.
Awesome. Okay. Well, and that wraps up kind of our run through of how all three programs utilize the system. And we hope if you've gotten something from this panel, this discussion, it's that, again, there's no one size fits all model in what HitTrax brings to a program. And with that being said, I hope you can also trust that 3 different coaches and 3 different awesome programs with probably 20 plus players on each roster. And I think the common feedback has been that your players are engaged by it, whether it's the data or the competition or the leaderboards. It's something that gets them in the cage. They enjoy the tools, they enjoy the feedback, and it helps them big picture in the game. So coaches, we really appreciate your time. We appreciate your support, your partnership. We're really so happy to have you all as part of the HitTrax family. And thank you so much for sharing your experience with HitTrax with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.